Hi everyone, welcome to another Ashtown Creations YouTube tutorial. My name is Stephanie, and in this video today we're going to be making a bag that I've wanted to make for ages. It's called the Goddess of the Sea Shoulder Bag by Needle and Anchor Patterns. This bag here is all mine. I have had these fabrics and this embroidery design picked out for a long time, and I finally found time to record this video. So the Goddess of the Sea has actually 3 instructional documents. The original document, add-on pack 1, and add-on pack 2, and there are quite a number of differences between each of the packs. I have included some of the options from all of those packs in this tutorial. I try and do my best to let you know which document I'm referring to and what page of the document I'm referring to. If I haven't actually verbally said it, I will do my best when I'm editing to put it in, what page I'm on, what part, what document, what page, everything. So there is a bunch of jumping around, and in the jumping around, there is a closure strap that I really wanted to add to this that I missed out on. So when you're reading the patterns and deciding what parts you want out of what documents, pay attention to the order things are sewn in, because I missed not only doing, so I did the bottom and then the next part I should have sewn these panels together. I completely missed that. Did it later, obviously, because the bag is done. But I also missed the closure strap as well. So we mess up, it happens. I still love my bag. So this bag has a lot to offer. It's got the split panels, so as you can see, I've done contrasting, both on the front and the back. It's large enough panel. It's a large enough panel that you can add something like embroidery, applique, heat transfer vinyl if you're into that and have the equipment to do it, probably would work nicely. I have done mine in, so this is a navy faux leather, and this is a mauve gray faux leather. Both of them are from Bodio fabrics. I will link everything in the description box below. And the mermaid design is from Urban Threads, and again, I will find the actual link to the design and post it below. So the sides of these panels, so the side panels, see if I can get this in, are very interesting. The original version has the zipper going all the way up to the top. This, with the top part on, was added in add-on pack 1. So I followed the instructions for that. And add-on pack 2 has the hidden strap connectors. Inside the zipper pockets, and actually I have my sunglasses in here already, I chose to do, so they fit a good size pair of sunglasses. So I chose to do, if I can show it, I did the pleated lining of the pocket as well as this pleated half gusset. It just keeps things from falling out when you open it all the way down. So that's on both sides of the bag. And the bottom of the bag, like I showed you before, I put purse feet. You don't have to put purse feet. You can put 5 as per the drawing on the instructions, or you can put 4. I saw some tester bags that only had 4, and I'm sure some have none. The strap, I tried to follow the instructions for the strap. Now, so I've used the O-rings. Mine are a little smaller than the pattern calls for. And the pattern also refers to, it's in the original version, and the original version had the connectors coming out the top, I believe. So when you put the strap together, if your connectors are like mine and hidden, you won't be able to put them together the way it is in the instructions as far as the final end, because this side had an O-ring and it attached to the connector. I can't sew that up with it already attached to the bag, and it needed to be attached before this is all put together. So I improvised, and I just used a swivel clasp on the end. And if I want, then it's handy actually, because I'm not a huge shoulder bag person. I like crossbody straps. So anyways, this one's not too bad size. And if I wanted to, I could just unclip this and put on a crossbody strap. So The pattern, the original pattern has this as a snap closure with the extra closure tab that hangs over that holds things together. I wanted that. I was going to put it in, where's the front? Put it in the front and just have it hanging down, but I missed it. So that's fine. I put in a recess zipper, so I don't really need it anyways. So the recess zipper panel. So there's the inside. And this fabric here is Carissa's from Needle and Anchor Patterns. She designs fabrics as well, and there's a lot of beautiful designs out there. The inside of this bag, so there's two parts. When you put the recess zipper in, it splits it into two parts. I chose to do the top part in vinyl outside and the inside in, and so yeah, the top part here is in vinyl, and then the split, and this part here is OtterTex waterproof canvas. So I added a zippered pocket on my own. It's not part of the instructions, but I go over how I did it and where I got. This is actually from the Driftwood handbag, this overlay piece, and I figured out the dimensions myself for the zipper pocket. I like closing the bag through the zipper pocket and then stitching up the zipper pocket. Makes turning the bag so much easier. And on the other side, it's hard to see the faux trim on this, but there is actually a faux trim on the slip pocket. The pattern includes a line here for two pen pockets, but I find my cell phone will fit nicely right in there. And I have my son's EpiPen to carry and pens and stuff, so they all fit nicely in here. So I'm trying to think if there's anything else. The zipper tape and slider that I'm using, I got, pretty sure it was from Zipper Valley. She has a lot of really nice zippers and colors and closures, although you can get these ones, these zipper pulls other places. But anyways, so Zipper Valley, I'm pretty sure the O-rings and my D-rings came from Lauren at moremeknow.com, and these swivel clasps are mine. The purse feet are rivet-on purse feet that I got from the place where I got my press, rivet press. It's Minkus Margot on Etsy. So I've gotten some press or rivet-on purse feet from her. I've got them from other places as well, because Saya Swag has some too. Yeah, so my tag from Brick Bubble, it's a cork tag with my label on it. So again, I will link everything in the description box below. I will also, because this is a pretty long tutorial, so I will link all of the timestamps in the description box as well, so you can pick which section you want to watch. You can you don't have to watch it all at once. You can, it's almost like chapters. You go listen to a chapter or watch a chapter a night if you wanted, or watch the whole thing all at once. It's up to you, but I'll provide the timestamps so you can jump to where you need to go. If you could like and subscribe, that would be awesome. Please leave any questions or comments in the comment section below. I do my best to answer. I don't always get notified immediately of comments, so it may take a day or two to get back if I don't see it right away. I'm trying to figure out how to get that to work. Anyways, so leave your questions, comments in the comment section below. And I want to thank Carissa again for allowing me to do video tutorials of her patterns. All right, let's get sewing this bag. All right, let's go through the pieces of this Goddess of the Sea shoulder bag. So as I may have mentioned in the intro, there are 3 parts, I guess, to this pattern. There's the original pattern, so the Goddess of the Sea original pattern. There's an add-on pack 1, which has a recess zipper, alternative zipper gusset, alternative strap connectors, and a slip pocket trim. And the Goddess of the Sea add-on pack 2, which contains pleated zipper gusset pockets with half gusset, hidden connectors, faux trim slip pocket. I'm not doing all of the features, because you can't have a snap and a recess. Well, I guess you could have a snap and a recess zipper panel on the top to close it, but you can only pick one of the ways that you want to do the side gusset pieces. So I'm going to be doing a little bit of everything. So starting off with the main Goddess of the Sea pattern, the pieces that I have cut are, I have the strap cut, and at this point I have it cut, if you can see the pattern, it has rings in it. So it's in a few different, it's not one continuous strip, it's in a few different pieces. So I have the 3 cut. I'm planning on keeping this bag for myself, and I'm not usually a shoulder bag person. I may decide to change later to make it a like an adjustable crossbody strap. But for now, I've got it cut to make it as it is written in the pattern. So I have the 3 pieces, 2 short and 1 long. So these pieces that I'm going through right this minute are from the original pattern. I have the gusset lining. I have 2 pieces of gusset lining. I've done them in the OtterTex waterproof canvas in a coral color. That other one was a faux leather from Bodio Fabrics in a dark navy blue. And then also from the original pattern is the exterior panel 1 and 2. So the way I have cut it, I have contrasting fabrics. So the way I have cut it, you need to have at least 2 of them mirrored. So I cut it like this, but I plan on having all of the mauve gray, which is also faux leather from Bodio, all of the mauve gray on one side, and all of the dark navy blue on the other side. So the front of the bag will have these 2 joined in the center. So make sure when you cut your pattern pieces out, you have 2 going one way and 2 mirrored. So that's from the original pattern. So one more from the original pattern. I have the bag base. So I have the bag base. I've got it in the dark navy faux leather. I have it already backed with my Decaville Heavy. And I also have cut out the holes for the purse feet, and I'll be lining it with the orange waterproof canvas, or coral waterproof canvas. So that is it for the pieces that I'm using from the original pattern. Moving on to what I'm using from the add-on pack 1. I have the recessed zipper panel. So I've got 2 for the exterior. I'm going to use the faux leather, and on the interior I'm using this linen cotton canvas from Spoonflower. This is actually Carissa from Needle and Anchor Patterns. This is one of her designs. I have not interfaced this because it's thicker. I don't feel that it needs to be interfaced. I'll see when I go to put it together if maybe I change my mind and decide later it needs to be interfaced. But right now I don't believe it needs to be interfaced. And I have cut 1 zip according to the length in the add-on pack 1. So that's the recessed zipper panel with the zipper. Also from the add-on pack 1, I have the side panels. I have 4 of the faux leather, so 2 for each side for the exterior. And I have 2 of this linen cotton canvas for the lining of that, so it'll be on the opposite side. We're almost making a recessed zipper on the side, like a recessed zipper panel on the side of the bag. So the way we make it is very similar to a recessed zipper. So we have, these will be on the exterior of the zipper. This will be on the interior of the zipper. So you have to pull the side out to see the inside lining of that. And I have 2 zippers cut as per the directions in the add-on pack 1. So those are for the side gusset zippers. So on the side of these, let me just pull up the side. So the side of this is I don't know if you can see, but the side on the first one, the side panel on the first one goes all the way to the top. I decided not to do that one. I am doing this one, which doesn't go all the way to top. It has an it has a piece, gusset top piece. So this is the zipper panel that I am doing, but I'm also going to be doing with the zipper, the add-on pack 2. So it'll look very similar to this. So it doesn't go all the way to the top, and it has the hidden strap connectors. So the top gusset I have done in the dark navy faux leather. I've already started marking out my lines for the hidden connectors on this piece. I have the closure tab cut. So on the front of the bag, this closure tab comes from the back and hangs over the front and just helps keep it closed. I'm putting a recessed zipper in. It's not necessary. It's not necessary to have it with the snap closure, but with the recessed zipper closure, it's decorative. I have it cut out. I'm debating whether I put it on. I do like the look of it, but I don't really want that in my way, that closure in my way, like have to flip it back all the time. I'm contemplating putting it in the front seam as opposed to the back seam. This is something I will decide when I get there. Also from the add-on pack 1, being that we're putting in a recessed zipper, the lining is a bit different. So the lining has the 2 parts now. It has a top part that will be seen above the recessed zipper, and it also has the lining piece that's below the recessed zipper. So I have chosen the navy, dark navy faux leather for the top, and I'm going with the Yachtertex waterproof canvas for the main part of the lining. I didn't have enough of the linen cotton canvas, or I might have done that for the lining. So moving on to so that's all of the pieces that I'm using out of the add-on pack 1. So from the add-on pack 2, I have the hidden connectors, hidden connector piece. This is one that we will cut in 2. I have already interfaced it with Decaville Heavy. This part I don't believe is in the pattern. This pattern, Carissa has put it in some of her other patterns, like the driftwood handbag. So I've gone ahead and done that, put Decaville Heavy in there out of the seam allowances, and I've already stuck my double-sided tape on it. So that is add-on pack 2, the hidden connectors. Also from add-on pack 2 is the faux trim slip pocket. So you need 2 pieces. One will be the front and one the lining of it, but the lining will peek out on the front, just over the front, kind of making it look like that. Maybe a little less, but anyways, that will be, it's just adding a faux trim to the pocket. So this, instructions for this and the pieces for this are in add-on pack 2. Now for the side panels, the side gusset pieces where the pockets are, I've decided I'm going with the pleated interior as well as the pleated half gusset. So let's see if I can find the picture again. So down here we have the inside, so the blue, what looks like blue inside is actually pleated, and then the outside is a pleated half gusset. So it keeps things from, when you unzipped it all the way, it keeps things from falling out. So I've decided I'm going to follow the instructions for that. The pieces themselves are, there's a lot to it. I'm gonna try not to show dimensions. Okay, so the pieces have lines on it. Let me just, and these lines, the center lines, are where, depending on how big of a pleat we want, we decide which line we're going to use. And Carissa has added a little legend or a little chart in. So if you want 1-inch pleat. You follow the purple line with the heart, and yes, you cut on that, and then you fold on that. So I have decided that I am going to go with the 1-inch pleat. So right now I just folded all my pieces, so at each of the lines, so that I can reuse the piece. I'm not showing the top because it has dimensions, but so I folded it at that line, because I want to do the 1-inch pleat. So then I will mark my pieces for my gusset pieces, lining of the pocket, at the purple or the blue purple heart line. So that will be, I'll mark these on the pieces in a little bit, but that's what we're going to do. We're going to mark based on these dotted lines and cut based on the solid lines. And she does, like I showed you, include a little legend to tell you what everything is and what size of a pleat you'll get. And it's very much the same thing for the pleated half gusset. So the pleated half gussets I've got, I haven't marked them yet. I'm going to be doing them out of this linen cotton canvas, and I'm going to mark, I cut them based on the size for the 1-inch pleat, and then I will mark these later for based on the size of the 1-inch pleat. So for the insides, I'm hoping this is going to work, because like I mentioned, I ran out of the linen cotton canvas, so I'm going to try and use waterproof canvas. Not sure how well it's going to pleat, so that'll be interesting to find out. But again, I will mark these pieces based on the size of the interior pleat that I want. And then that's all for add-on pack 2. The one other thing I am adding to this, I like to turn my bag through the bottom, the base of the bag, and then close up the bag through the zipper pocket. So I have also cut an interior zipper pocket. When I'm editing this, I will put the dimensions up on the screen. I don't remember at this point what I cut them to. They are not in the pattern. This is something I've just decided I'm adding based on the pattern, the lining pattern piece. I'm also going to add a zipper overlay. This zipper overlay is, the pattern piece can be found in the driftwood handbag pattern. You don't even have to put it on. I just like the look of it. And I have a zipper for that. And basically I took the width of the zipper pocket I'm adding and cut my zipper tape to that length. So there's a lot of pieces, and there's going to be a lot of jumping around between the different patterns. So the original pattern to the add-on pack 1 to the add-on pack 2. So I will try my best to let you know when I'm switching to the, what pattern I'm switching to, what document I'm switching to. I'll try and let you know verbally, and if I don't, or I may actually on top of it, add it to the header for that section. So for example, we go and we do, the first step is go and do the base. So I will show you how to do the base. That's in the original pattern. The next thing that we do is create these inner gusset, basically create the gusset pockets, which is not in the original. It is in the add-on pack 1, the instructions for add-on pack 1. So I will tell you where I'm going, what page I'm going to, in which of the set of instructions. Hopefully this will make it a little more clear, because there are so many options to this, and there's so many ways to make this bag beautiful that it can get a little overwhelming. I know it took me a little bit to figure out exactly what pieces I needed and what I wanted to do. There are a few other videos out that others have done on this bag that have chosen other options. I haven't seen anybody do a video with the pleated gusset pockets and that half pleated pocket so things don't fall out. So I will try and remember to link them in the description box below. I will also be putting timestamps on this, because it's going to probably be a very involved, long video. I may split it in half if I have to, but I will put the timestamps in whichever, like if I split it in half, they'll be in both description boxes. So look in the description box for the comments, or for the timestamps, so you can skip to whatever section you want to see. I will also try and mark which page of which instructions it's on, as well as the materials I am using, a link to the pattern, and all of the add-ons. I will include that all in the description box below. So let's get sewing this beautiful bag. All right, before we move on, I found one more piece that I forgot to mention, and those are the hidden connector facings. So the hidden connectors we're doing don't have raw edges. They have little pieces of facing that will be stitched on like we stitch on zipper pockets, and then cut the center, and then the little triangles in the corner. We will be stitching those on. So I have 2 pieces of those. I have cut it out of the linen cotton canvas, and we will be attaching it to the top gusset side pieces, so we don't have any raw edges when we add our hidden connectors. So now let's get on to sewing. Okay, so I forgot to go through the hardware that we're going to need for this bag, or that I'm going to use on this bag. So I'm going to just go through the hardware, and then we're going to work on the first step, which is the bag base. So for the hardware, it requires, well, doesn't require. If you want to put bag feet on, which I am, you need 5 bag feet, purse feet. The pattern has 5 of them. You could get away with 4 probably, but 5, having the single one in the center just helps stabilize it. And if it's heavy, it keeps it from the center part from touching the ground. So anyways, I have rivet on purse feet. So I have the feet and I have the posts. So I have my bag feet. I have 4 zippers, 2 for the side pockets, 1 for the main recess zipper, and 1 for the interior zipper. I am going to do, the pattern calls for O-rings on the side. I don't quite have enough O-rings for all of it, so I'm going to do 2 D-rings on the hidden connectors. So it's still rounded on the top, but they're not O-rings, but they'll work. And then I have 2 O-rings. I think these are smaller than what the pattern calls for. These are 1 1/4. Pattern calls for 1 1/2, so I'm hoping that they work. As long as I'm doing that strap, you know, it should be okay. And then I have 1 O-ring for the closure, the strap closure that comes over the front of the bag. So I have another O-ring for that, and it's the same size as the others. I have one of my cork bag labels for Ashtown Creations, and I have 1 strap end. The way the pattern's written, it has the zipper coming out on both sides, and there is a pattern piece for fabric ends. I want a metal end, and I'm contemplating whether I'm going to do it coming out both sides or adjust the recess zipper a bit so that it's only one end that comes out. I haven't gotten there yet. Anyway, so I have at least 1. I may end up adding 2 strap ends to the bag. All right, now let's move on to the bag base. Moving on to the exterior bag base. So I have my faux leather. I've already added my Decaville heavy. I am going to quickly stitch around 1/4 of an inch away from the edge of the Decaville heavy. I'm going to go and stitch around that, and then I will be back and I will add my purse feet. All right, so I've gone and I've stitched around the Decaville heavy 1/4 of an inch from the edge of the Decaville heavy all the way around. I actually did a contrast stitch. Now I am going to go and add the bag feet. So now I take one of the posts and I stick it in from the back of the bag, of the base. I pop on the little foot, and I have on my already set up, I have my die set up for pressing on my bag feet. So I'm just going to press it into place and check it to make sure it doesn't move. And there we have 1 foot on the base. So I'm going to go ahead and add the rest of them, and then we'll move on to the next step. And there we go, all the bag feet have been added. I've tested them, I've played with them to see if they move, they don't move, so we're all good. Okay, on to the next step. All right, we're moving on now to the alternative zipper gusset piece preparation. If you decide you're not doing the alternative, you would continue on page 6 of the original pattern. But for the alternative zipper gussets, I am now flipping to page 5 of add-on pack 1. So I'll be following the instructions on there. So for this, we need our exterior panel and our 2 exteriors. For this is just for one side, 2 exterior panels, 2 lining panels, and our zipper. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to place my zipper wrong side down along this piece, grab some of my clips, and start clipping it so that, because I'm going to base this one on first. So I'm going to clip this all the way down. And I'm going to baste it on. I've got a number 5 stitch length right now. I'm going to baste it at 1/4 or 1/8 of an inch. So just along the edge to hold it in place. Now I want to take the lining panel for this, and again, I'm working with linen cotton canvas. I haven't interfaced it, so I'm hoping this works. And I'm going to clip it along the same. I'm going to face my clips this direction so that I have the thinner fabric on the bottom so that the feed dogs can help pull it through evenly. And this way I can also see my other line of stitching so that when I'm make sure that I'm on this side, towards the zipper side. I'm going to change it to a 3.5 stitch length, and I'm going to stitch it at as close to a quarter of an inch as possible. My foot doesn't let me get right that close, and I don't feel like switching out to a zipper foot. Anyway, so I'm going to stitch it as close to a 1/4 of an inch all the way down. All right, trim my tails. Now I'm going to fold both this side and this away from the zipper. Matching, I'm going to match them up so that they're even because we want them to be even later. So I'm going to take some of my clips and clip them. We're going to top stitch from the other side, so I'll clip them facing the other way. If you have like this linen cotton canvas, I could iron, but I don't want to stop the video to get up and iron. So I'm just going to finger press it. It works finger pressing it too. And just clip it to keep it together. Change it to a top stitch length. For me that's 5. And I'm going to top stitch 1/8 of an inch away from the zipper, or 1/8 of an inch away from this edge on top of my faux leather. Needle down. Back stitching. All right, now we will do this to the other side. So again, matching up the edge, I'm going to clip it. So now I'm going to do exactly what I did for the other side. I'm going to baste it on at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Then I will add this one in and stitch it on with as close to a 1/4 of an inch as I can. Open it up just like I did the other one and top stitch. And then I will do the same for my other piece and we will come back. All right, and there we go, all done with page 5 of the add-on pack 1, the alternative zipper gusset. For now, we're going to skip ahead to add-on pack 2 to add our hidden connector, which we need to sew up. We're going to need our hidden connector facings, and we're going to need our exterior parts of the gusset top. So we want to add on the hidden strap, at least the connector part, the facing part. I'm going to stitch these up, but I don't think I'm going to add it until after I've stitched it onto the top of this. But moving on, we're going to add at least the hidden connector facings, pull it through, and get it ready to accept the hidden connectors. All right, up first, we're going to be stitching up our hidden strap connectors. So I've gone ahead and cut the piece according to the add-on pack 2, and then I've added a little bit, I think it's 7/8 by the length of Decaville heavy in there, so that the straps are a little sturdier, and because all of the weight of the bag will be held on these straps. So I've gone ahead and added my Decaville heavy. I put a line down the center, and now I've put double-sided tape on it. I'm going to take the paper backing off the double-sided tape, and I'm going to start folding the sides into the center, into that center line. And I want them to meet as the best possible way I can. Like, I want it to be nice and neat, although the way the hidden strap connectors are done, you won't see much of the inside of this, but I still want it to be nice and neat. So I'm going to line it up, meeting the centers all the way, both sides. Adjusting pieces that don't sit right. Okay, and now I'm going to stitch. I'm going to do 2 lines of stitching. It doesn't say in the pattern to do this, but I'm going to do it anyways. I'm going to do my first one at 1/4 of an inch and come back around and do a second line at 1/8 of an inch. So I have 2 lines of stitching on this these connectors. So making sure I have a top stitch length -5, and I'm going to go down, across, and up at 1/4, down, across, and up at 1/8. All right, I've folded the strap, the one into 2, and cut it in half. So now we have 2 hidden strap connectors, one for either side of the bag. Okay, moving on to the hidden strap connector facings. So I've already marked some lines because I don't have a pen that works well on here, on this dark navy, that would rub off later. And you want to make sure it rubs off, because you will see this on the side of your bag. So I have used just my Choco pen, and I have already marked the rectangle on my facings, and I want to place my facings. So I measured the piece on this piece, pattern piece in the add-on pack 2, it shows you where you're supposed to put it. So I measured from top and from bottom and just marked a couple lines as an indication of where these are supposed to go. So I've got these in here. I'm trying to line them up with the center line as well as in between these 2 lines. And then I'm going to just go and stitch around this box. And I'm going to leave it at my top stitch length. It's supposed to make it easier to manipulate when you pull it through if you're working at a larger, or a larger stitch length. But you might have to adjust and stay within the box that you've drawn on the pattern piece. right, so I've gone and I've stitched around. I'm going to just snip off my threads. And now I want to put a line in here, and then like we do with zipper pockets, adding zipper pockets this way, we want to put a little Y, so our little triangle here. So I'll put a line in the center and then on an angle out to the corners to make little triangles. I'm going to start, actually, I'm going to do it with my knife, since it's hard to get scissors in this small little area. So I'm going to just cut down the center and make sure I've cut all the way through with a knife, and then go to the corners, not cutting my threads, trying not to cut my threads, and then do the little triangles into the corner, all 4 corners. All right. Make sure it's cut all the way through. This one's not. They look like they're all cut through. All right, so those are all cut through. Now I'm going to just crease it a bit to try and help it when it goes through. I'm going to push it through to the other side, all of it. Pull it out. And we want it to pull it out taut so that the outside looks nice and clean. All right, so what I'm going to do now, since it's pretty much pulled through, I'm going to grab this is just my 1/4 inch double-sided tape. I'm going to grab some of it and put some around here. Don't want a whole lot because my machine doesn't really like double-sided tape, but hopefully it will be okay with these, and then I'll clean off my needle after. So pull it back and press it down, and do it for all 4 sides. All right, I had my piece a little too tight on the back, so I loosened it up a bit. So go ahead and do this for the other piece. Clean up your marks, and we'll be back. All right, so I have both done. I'm going to set one aside for now. We'll just work with one. So what we want to do is add the hidden connector to the gusset top piece. So I'm going to take the connector, and the seam is right there, the center seam. This is the right side, this is the wrong side. We're going to place it with the wrong side facing up, so right sides together, in this hole, about almost halfway down. I'm going to do a little less than halfway. I'm going to do it so it lines up with the bottom there. Make sure it's even, like it's straight up and down. I'm going to put a clip or two in, just one's probably fine. I'm going to flip it over, and I'm going to stitch like this 1 inch area between here and here, keeping it within the connector because I don't want it to go outside. Otherwise we might be able to see the stitches. So trying to keep it inside, and I'm putting it on my 3.5 and back and all the way across, about an inch above, or 1/8 of an inch above that line. Where are my snips? All right, snips. Okay, so you can skip me, trim my threads. All right, so you can see the line that I stitched right here across. And now we're going to measure up a little bit. Get a pen, so my silver marking pen. I got this from Lauren at Mormino. So just Sew Whatever. This is one of hers. And I'm going to put a dot right in the center, just above the stitch line. So you can see that right there. I've got my stitch line and I've put a dot. I'm going to turn around. I've got my hole press right behind me. So I'm going to punch a hole in that, right on that dot. All right, I've punched a hole in it. Now I'm going to grab a rivet and I'm going to see. I think this is just a small rivet. And put a small rivet here. So the other press I have is just like this one, only I have it set up with my 2mm die. So I've put this one in. I'm going to press the rivet down. I want to grab, I'm using D-ring, so I'm going to, oops, that's not a D-ring. Grab one of my D-rings, put it over there, and then put this down through the hole that's left. And tuck it in fairly tight. We want it in there. We want it seated in there quite well. And now that we have the D-ring in, the connector in, we're going to stitch across here, keeping it within this 1 inch area, 1/8 of an inch away or less away from this edge. And I'm just going to go over and pull it out, just one line, and I'm going to pull my threads to the back and tie it off so that they hold and it looks better. Alright, so we have this on the outside. Now I'm going to mark. I put a mark about 1/4 of an inch below that line, centered with the strap connector. So I'm going to grab my silver marking pen again, try and center it up on that connector, 1/4 of an inch down from the edge, and put a dot. I'm going to turn around and punch a hole. And now I'm going to grab, so I put a hole in it, now I'm grabbing a medium rivet and I'm going to put it through all of the layers, all the way to the back. Put the cap on, and now I'm going to press that down. And there we go. We've got one hidden connector added. Go ahead and add the second one, and then we'll come back. Both of my hidden strap connectors are done. It's time to move on from the add-on pack 2 back to the add-on pack 1, and we are going to be adding these to the main zipper gussets. All right, the instructions for adding the top gusset piece to the zippered gusset piece can be found in add-on pack 1 on page 6. So I'm going to put one set aside and just work on one at this point. All right, so now I want to add the zipper slider or zipper pull to my zipper. I've separated my zipper. I'm going to try and straighten it out. So looking at this coil is at the top. It ends up, if I keep things straight, it ends up being higher than the other side. So I'm going to slip that on this side first, on the right hand side first, and then I'm going to put in the left hand side, trying to keep it so that this side is a little higher. Then I push till it pops. So it's popped, and now I pull it on, and I have a look to see if there is one side that's a little higher than the other. And in this case I can see that this side is a little higher, so I have it down a little too far, and you can actually see that with the coils. I think you can see that with the coils. This side should be up at least one. So I'm pulling it back, trying to not pull it out completely. Down one, so I've moved one side down a bit, and then pop it on, and there we go. This is right the next, so this side, the right side is first, then the coil on the next side of it, and all the way down. So I'm going to slide it, have a look, and there's no side larger than the other, like there's no lump on one side versus the other. So I'm going to slide that into the middle, and I'm going to go ahead and do that to the second one, and then I'll be right back. All right, I have the zipper slider on both pieces. The one thing to remember, if you have a directional print, mine doesn't seem to matter one way or the other which way I have it. But if you have a directional print, you probably want it to go top to bottom. Make sure you put your zipper slider on the other way, the proper way, so that it zips up towards the top. All right, moving on. So we've got our zipper panel and the gusset top piece. I marked my center, I snipped my center already when I went to put my hidden connector on. If you don't have it marked, it would have been a good thing to probably do it first if you're putting hidden connectors. If you're doing one of the other connector options, which would be in the seam or over top of this, it's marking it now wouldn't be a problem. But since I have it in there, I've already got mine marked. I am going to take this piece and try and line it up, the V part, the pointy part, with the center of my zipper. And then I am going to clip. So I'm going to actually clip one on either side. So this part's a little bit in the way, but not too bad. So then I'll clip out from there. Actually, before I do that, I'm going to trim down this piece. I want it to be even on both sides, so I'm going to, oh, that didn't work. I want it to be even on both sides, so I'm going to trim this part down just a little bit to match. So again, putting my gusset top, matching it up, the center of the snip with the center of the zip, and clipping it into place. And then keep clipping out to the end of that point on both sides. Now I'm going to flip it over, grab this piece, which I don't have my center marked, and I'm going to actually mark my centers. So I like being able to see. I like being able to see the snips, so I put these snips in. Sometimes I will just go and mark it this way, but I have to be able to see it, and it's easier for me to see it when I'm recording by putting the snips in. Anyways, so now we want to put, we put right sides together on the outside, we put right sides together on the inside, and again we're trying to match the point of this snip with the center of the zip. Also want to try and make sure that it's lined up as much as possible with the point on the one on the interior and the point in the exterior are pretty close. They should be, they were cut the same size, but things can stretch. So it's good to try and make sure that they're as centered as possible. So anyways, I've included it within the clips. Now I'm going to the machine and I'm going to set it on a joining stitch length. Try and, this could probably come off. I don't think it needs to be there now. So I'm actually just going to snip it down so it's out of the way. There we go. So we've already got it in there and we've already got it riveted. The other part's just extra. So now it's out of my way. I'm going to stitch this across from point to point with a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance.
Oh.
So now, it looks like I want to flip this right side up, both pieces. So push the lining out. So I'm going to trim some of this down a bit. I'm going to just trim this part down a bit. I really need it where the handle connectors are. But I don't want to cut it right out to the side in case we need that. All right, so I'm going to fold this one up and finger press, and then fold the other exterior up and finger press. Also going to clip it at the top. I'm clipping the two pieces together to try and keep them out nice and flush, so we don't have like lining fabric smaller than the exterior. So anyways, now I'm going to just top stitch across the seam we just sewed, and I'm putting it on a number 5 stitch length. And this piece is ready. So go ahead and do the same thing with the next piece, with the other piece, and we'll move on to the next part. All right, with both side panels done, we're just going to set these aside for a bit and work on the lining of the gusset piece. I had originally wanted to use waterproof canvas, the Artetex waterproof canvas. So this is about 600D. So it's quite thick. I had wanted to use them for the pleated alternative gusset lining, but I'm finding it too thick and I don't think it's going to work for this bag. If somebody wants to give it a try, it's up to them to give it a try, but I can't get it to lie really flat. And even if I iron it, it's not going to be nice and flat. So I've decided that even though I have these two made up, I can always take the stitching out and reuse the pieces for something else. I'm going to actually go ahead and work with, off to the side, I have some 10-ounce regular cotton canvas. So I'm going to go ahead and use these pieces for mine. They're a lot lighter, more flexible, so not as stiff. And I think they will pleat nicer. And I actually have my iron here, so I will, I'm actually going to iron them. So put one aside for now. So I'm going to go ahead and, like I did for the other ones, which I probably removed from the video, I'm going to go ahead and mark the center. So I'm lining up the sides of the pieces. I'm going to mark the center. And then I'm going to mark the two outside lines. And I'm using the darker blue, purpley blue with the hearts. So I've folded mine in, and actually I can fold it in this way too if I wanted to draw the line right down. But in this case, I'm just moving it down from the top a little bit and marking the lines. And you do this on the wrong side, but I don't see one side of the cotton canvas any better than the other, so it doesn't really matter too much. So again, on the bottom, I'm marking the inside, the center lines, and the two outside lines. Now I'm going to take my piece with the lines drawn on it. I am going to take the outside and fold it back so that and in this case, I can poke holes in this one. So I can take a pin. I'm going to put a pin in the back side and see where it comes out on the front side to see. This is a good way to line up the points. So that's where I want. So now I've got it lined up. You can see the pins pretty much straight up and down. So that's where I want the one side. So I'm just gonna set it a little bit with the iron. And then I fold this back on itself. So that was the outside line, comes into the center line, matching it up, and then it folds back on itself like that. I'm going to put in a pin. Actually, yeah, I'm going to put in a pin on this side and then do the same for the other side. So the other line, see if I can do this backwards. The other line folds in, so right sides together, because we've made the marks on the wrong side. Fold it in to the center and then fold it back out on itself from the outside line. And again, I'm going to put a pin in it. It's easier on the second side because you already have the fold on the first. So I'm going to quickly give it a little press to try and press those pleats in. I'll give it a better press after. So then I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to do the same on the bottom. So I already have my marks on the wrong side, not the bad side, the wrong side. And so I'm going to do it again. So I'm folding right sides together. So this is the right side. Matching up the two center points. I am going to take another pin, put it through where I have it on in this case on the outside, and see how it matches. And actually, if you can see that, it matches pretty well. So that's good. Give it a little bit to help it. And then I want to fold back on itself the outside line. And then I can put the pin in this side to hold it. Same with the other side. Folding that line into the center and then back on itself. So it's tucking the underside of the pleat underneath the exterior part of the panel. So put this in, put a pin in, and then I'm going to give it a little bit of a press, heat. So now that I've got the top and the bottom, the folds ironed in, I'm going to actually take the pins out, and I'm going to pull it straight like this and walk my fingers across, and that is where I want the pleat line to be. So I'm going to take the iron, making sure it's straight across the top and the bottom, and I'm just going to quickly run the iron across it, making sure that the pleat doesn't move. And then back. I want to press the lines in so that they are, with this cotton canvas, I should be able to press them so that they stay. Other way, making sure it's all lined up like this with the pins in. I'm going to try this one, and I'm going to iron down the center, keeping the centers together. This should help press the creases in. And I'll do it from the back side too. So when I said I wanted a 1-inch pleat on my panel, this is what I was talking about. At the back, this should be about 1 inch. So we folded it in 1/2 inch one way, 1/2 inch the other, back on itself. And we now have a 1-inch pleat all the way down. Give it a little bit more of a press. Oops, steam's the other side. There we go, a little bit of steam. So I can do that because I'm using the cotton canvas. All right, do the same thing to the other piece, and then we'll move on. All right, so both of the panels are now done. I'm going to just quickly take it over to the machine and top stitch across, just a base stitch across the top about 1/4 of an inch. We just want to keep these pleats in place, so we'll tack it with the machine. All right, so I've gone ahead and I've basted the pleats on all 4 ends of the 2 pieces. What we need to do now is take the zipper cutting, or the zipper panel lining cutting template that comes in add-on pack 2, because the pleats are available in add-on pack 2. Carissa has provided a cutting template so that we can cut out the piece into the right shape. So I'm actually going to fold my piece so I can find the center of it, because I want to center it over the pleat. So I'm going to put the center mark, so I've just folded the top and the bottom. I'm going to try and match it up with the center line of the pleat. So match it up with this line. And it is definitely bigger, which is fine, because that gives room for any errors, if you got things a little bit too big, it's fine. It allows for any flexibility. So I've lined it up at the top, well, not completely at the top, just at my stitches. I'm going to pull this down so you can see. I've lined it up right at there's my basting stitches. So line it up at the basting stitches at the top. And I'm going to, with this is my Air Erasing Sew Line pen, just going to mark it around, following the curve at the top. And now I'm going to clip it, because I've drawn that line. I'm fine. I'm going to clip it with my hair clips, because they're a little bit longer. And then I'm going to come to the bottom, line it up again at the bottom with the pleat line. I'm going to draw the corner and across. And now I'm going to put clips in just to hold it while I continue to draw around the rest of the piece. So now I can come down the sides. And as you can tell, my lines aren't nice and even. I find it hard to draw on the sides of a piece of paper. I may transfer this to some comic book board at another time, but for this one, this is what I'm using. Just a piece of paper that I printed out the pattern on. All right, so I've gone ahead and drawn that. I can remove my template. Grab my scissors, and I am going to cut the straightest line I can using my scratching drawing as a guide. Actually, I'm going to, so I've drawn the top. I don't know if you can see this. I've drawn the top of this right over top of my stitches. Well, if I go to cut it, I'm going to cut my stitches. So I'm just going to quickly turn around. There we go. So I've added a second row of stitching so that when I cut the first row of stitching, I still have my pleat tacked down. So. And then across the bottom, the same thing. So I've marked my line below the stitching. So I'm gonna actually end up cutting off those stitches, which I'll do right now. And then I'm gonna go back and baste it after. So really, I could have done the same thing at the top and just gone back after to baste them. You can do it before or after. So I've cut off my basting stitches. So now I'm just gonna tack them down again. All right, one panel done. So go on and do the other panel, and then we'll move on to the pleated half gusset. All right, I'm just gonna take it back and base stitch the top, and then we'll move on to the next step. All right, moving on to page 10 of the add-on pack 2, we're gonna be working on our pleated half gussets. Now it looks like I originally showed you these in when I went through the pieces. I forgot to cut out a second part, so the lining part of these pieces. I've run out of this, otherwise I would have done it in that. So I've used the same 10-ounce cotton canvas that I used on the larger pleated sections. So I'm just gonna work with these. So what we need to do, put one off to the side for now. Going to take one of each, and I'm going to put right sides together. Line them up, and now I'm going to stitch them to 3/8 of an inch with a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. So I'm going to change my stitch length to a 3.5, and I'm going to stitch all the way across. I'll do both of them all across the top, all the way across the top with a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. Now I'm going to open up the seam. So I'm going to fold this back and then fold it again so that they're even. Try and get this even along the top. Make sure the sides match up. That helps get it even across the top. So I'm actually going to clip the sides. So I'm trying to roll it between my fingers to get it to be nice and even. And once I do, I'm just going to quickly turn, give it a little bit of a press, because I have my iron right here. So there, I've given it a little bit of a press so it's nice and even. And now I'm going to top stitch. I'm going to top stitch at 1/8 of an inch, so move it up to a number 5. And then I'm going to not only top stitch, but then I will continue to baste around the entire piece to make it one piece. And now I'll baste along the other edges. I'm keeping my stitch length to a 5 and just doing 1/8 of an inch. So basically it's top stitching all the way around. It's just, these are going to be hidden. So they're not really top stitched. Top stitching is a nice decorative stitch. Basting is just holding things in place. And there's one. Go ahead and do the same thing with the other piece. All right, there we go. We've cleaned those up, or we've cleaned up all the threads, we've top stitched, we're ready to move on to the next step. For this next step, we will be pleating these half gussets. So I decided that we have to figure out which one we want as the front. I've decided I want this as the front. This is what I want to see poking out of the pocket. So now we need to transfer the markings from the pleated half gusset piece, which is basically the same as we did for the larger pieces. This is just the smaller half gusset, or pleated half gusset. So anyways, again, I've decided I'm using that purpley blue with the heart. So I'm going to mark on the back with erasable pen this time. I'm going to mark the center, and then I'm going to mark the two where the hearts are, my outside. And I'm going to do this on the top and on the bottom. And I'm going to do it to both pieces. Put that aside. So now I've marked both the top. Come up my threads. Now I've marked both the top and the bottom, if you can see them, and then the bottom of these pieces. We're going to pleat them very much the same way as we did the other parts. We'll be folding, only we're going to do it opposite. We're going to fold these marks together. So we've marked on the wrong side. We're going to fold the wrong sides together, matching up the lines. So I've matched up my lines in there. I don't know if you can see that. So matched up the lines, and then I want to bring the outside line, I want to fold it back on itself that way. So what we're doing is pleating it the opposite way. We're in the other panels, grab them. Where these panels, this is the side that's going to be seen, this is the back side. For these panels, we will see this 1 inch pleat, like we'll see that 1 inch thing on the front. So it's pleating it opposite to what we did for the other one. So I'm going to do it both top and the bottom. So I'm matching up those lines and then folding it back on itself. So I fold it in to match them up, and then I fold this back on itself. I'm going to take some clips and clip this into place. Top and bottom. Since this is a smaller piece, it's a little easier to do top and bottom at the same time. So that will be one side of what the outside looks like. So we're going to take the other one, fold it so that this outside mark matches the inside one. So I'm folding it this way. So I fold it in this way and then fold this piece back out. The other thing we want is, we don't want any overlap. So I don't know if you can see this here. They're meeting each other. These spots are meeting each other. They're not overlapped. And that's what we want. We don't want an overlap. Clip this back up. So now we've got one side meeting. Now we'll just work on the other one. So again, take that mark, fold it wrong sides together into the center, matching those two lines, and then folding that part back out on itself. And so the lining part, and just a second, clip this. So the lining part this time, inside will look like that, and the outside will look like that. So go ahead and do this and repeat it for the second piece. And then we are going to go ahead and do this. So go ahead and do this for the other piece, and then we'll move on to the next step. And if you want to, you can press the seam or press this pleat so that it's a little more crisp. So I'll just go ahead. I'm putting my iron in the center so I don't iron my my clips, and then just blasting it with a bit of steam to try and press it flat. So there's one. I'll do the other one. Okay, and there we go. Now it's time to move on to the next step. All right, so now we have our pleated half gusset pieces done. We need to cut them down to fit the just like we cut down the other pieces. We need them, cut them down to fit. So we have this pleated half gusset cutting template that we are supposed to use to cut these out. So I am going to match them up. I'm matching them up at the top of the piece. So I'm putting it down on top, but I'm also matching it up at the top. My instructions say matching up the bottom edges, and then cutting off the top, but that doesn't make sense to me since we've finished our top edge. So I'm wondering if mine is an old printing of the pattern and if it's actually changed. So we finished the top edge. We don't want to cut it off. So if your pattern does still say the bottom edge, matching up the bottom edge, then don't. Just match up the top edges. So looks like I've done something wrong here. Either I didn't cut my pieces long enough or this piece is a little long. Anyways, doesn't matter. So my little half gusset pieces will be slightly shorter than they should have been. It's still going to work. So I'm just going to mark down the sides of these pieces. So that's what we want to make sure that, we want to make sure the pleat is still pleated. So yeah, so I've got these drawn out now. I'm going to take a ruler and draw a nice line. We're going to cut this off, so it doesn't have to be perfect, but I like using a ruler for things I can. Actually, I have my rotary cutter here, so I'm going to use my rotary cutter now and cut along those lines. And there's one side, and I'm going to cut along the other side. So now our piece is smaller and should fit on the lining side piece. So put that aside, do the same thing for the other one. Again, I'm matching the top part. And I'm going to clip it. So if I had an acrylic template, then I could just put the template over and use the template to cut. But I don't have the acrylic template. Actually, I'm going to fold this in half. Try and find the center. I should have done that with the other one. So I find the center, and then I want to try and match it up with the center of these pieces. So there, match the center line of the pleat with the center line on the cutting template. Clip it on again, trying to keep the pleat together. I'm going to mark where I need to cut on both sides. Take this off. Line up my ruler with the marks that I've made and cut. Same on this side. All right, my ruler away. And now we can move on to the next part. So that was on page 12 of the add-on pack 2. Now it's page 13. We're going to assemble these two pieces. So we've got the two pleated lining panels. Now we need to add the two half gusset panels. So basically, like I just did, we're going to match up the centers as best as possible and then match up the edges. I'm going to clip along the edges and the bottom, including the pleat, because I want to make sure the pleat stays. So we're matching up sides and the bottom and trying to match up the pleats in the center. Keep everything lined up. And I'll do the same thing for the other side. So matching up the centers, matching up the bottom and the sides. And clip. If you're comfortable doing this without clipping, go ahead. I like to keep things lined up, so I'm gonna clip. Things tend to get caught in the space around my presser foot and plate. So it's just better if I have things clipped that have lots of grooves in them. So anyways, I have these two on now. I am going to, see, that's what it looks like. I am going to go and baste around the sides and the bottom of both pieces. Just a basting 1/8 of an inch size, probably a 5 stitch length. And then we'll move on to the next section. All right, here we are back at the machine. I'm going to just, like I said, baste around the sides and the bottom, all the way around this for both of them. And then we'll move on to the next step. All right, so now we have the half gusset stitched onto the full gusset lining. On to the next step. All right, for the next step, we have switched from the add-on pack 2 back to the original pattern, and on page 7, we are going to be, the instructions for this part are on page 7. So we need to take the main panel, I'll just grab one of them for now. So the main panel, and then, so flip it over, so wrong side up, and one of the lining panels, and put it wrong side down so that it's facing. Center up, we want to center up the center of the zipper with the center of the gusset, or the panel piece, the pleated panel piece. So I'm going to match this up. It's quite a bit there, so it's fairly thick. I'm going to clip it, actually I'm going to clip it so that we can see the wrong side of this piece. And I'm going to clip it, center the, so we want to center this with the center of this center snip. And I'm going to clip it up the top here. Now what we want to do is we're going to baste all of the edges. In the pattern it shows to cut it before you baste it, but I want to baste before I cut, so then it's not moving around on me when I'm trying to cut. So going to, here, I'll keep my stiletto here. I'm going to start at the top. We make sure that any D-rings or hardware or anything is out of the way. And we are going to, baste it so that it's about, basting is about 1/8 of an inch. So longer stitch. So I've got my long number 5 stitch length. So I'm going to baste all the way around the piece, and then I'll do the other one, and then we'll move on to the next step. Ran out of bobbin thread, so I'll swap my bobbin out and we'll start off where we left off. All right, so bobbin number 2 is in. I may need to wind another bobbin later, but for now we're working on number 2. And I'm going to go back. It ended here. I'm going to go back a few stitches and start like about 3 stitches back. So we have quite a good pile of fabric right here I need to get over. So this came with my machine. This piece right here is quite thick, so I tend to just use this as a hump jumper. So I'm just going to put it underneath, and it will help me climb this hill of fabric. All right, so we have one panel basted on already. I'm going to trim around the sides, matching the seam or matching the edge of the pleated gusset part, and then do the other and move on to the next step. And there we have one panel. Go ahead and do the other panel, and then we'll move on. Okay, so now we want to create the exterior and interior gusset, which includes adding the base to the sides and doing the lining the same way. So these are the side gusset pieces, and that's the base for the lining. So we're going to take right sides together with the base that we've already put our feet on, and we're going to match up the short ends. And I'm going to clip them together. So now that I've got them clipped, I'm going to be stitching at a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance across here, keeping in mind that this area is quite thick, so I may need to use my fabric hump jumper. So I'm going to do this on this side. I'm going to add the other to the other side, again keeping in mind the bulk, and then we're going to turn it and top stitch. So 3/8, joining these together with the 3/8. So changing it to a 3.5 stitch length. All right, now I'm going to fold this back on itself. I want all of the seam allowance to go towards the base, and I am going to top stitch it at 1/8 of an inch along the base. So, top stitch length of 5. Again, we're going through a lot of layers, so I may need the hump jumper again. If you're doing the non-pleated version, I don't believe you would have the same amount of bulk. A lot of it's because of the pleats. And now do the same for the other side. And there we go, bottom of the bag. On the exterior, put it aside, and then we'll work on the lining. All right, so now both of the lining and the exterior are done. I decided I wanted to top stitch the seam allowance towards the side instead of towards the base on this, because we have enough bulk with the pointing towards the base with this seam. So just to reduce the bulk a little bit, I stitched it going the other way. Now I'm going to match the seams. I want to find, we're going to need it later on, and it's easier to do it now. I'm going to match these seams up and find the center of the gusset piece on exterior, and I'll do the same for the lining. Okay, these are all done now. We can set them aside and move on to the next step. All right, we have now finished page 8 on the original pattern, the sewing of the exterior base to the gusset sides and the lining base to the lining gusset sides. We're going to move on now. The next part, if you're following what I'm doing with the recessed zipper, then you will skip to page 9 of the add-on pack 1 for the recessed zipper. If you're not doing a recessed zipper, you would just continue on with page 9 of the original pattern, adding your magnetic snap. So for the recessed zipper, so page 9, add-on pack 1 are the instructions. We need our we've got 2 exterior pieces and 2 lining pieces and the zipper. So I cut it all according to the pattern instructions from add-on pack 1. So the zipper in the pattern spans both, like it hangs off of both sides. I don't really want it hanging off of both sides, so I'm just going to change it so it only hangs off of one. So then I can add a zipper end to one of them. So I'm slightly changing and modifying the way I'm doing this. Very similar. The only difference is I am going to put mine at a 90-degree angle and meet that 90-degree angle up with the spot that we're supposed to on the recessed zipper, instead of letting it hang over. So it's a little different, but not a lot. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my recessed zipper. Where's my pen? I'm going to take my recessed zipper, or my zipper, and I'm going to mark it up about 5/8 of an inch up. This is where I'm going to do a 90-degree turn in it, so it has a nice finished look. So I'm going to open the zipper a bit. So I've opened the zipper a bit, and now I'm going to, where we have that line, I'm going to pinch on that line. So I pinch on the line and then fold it over sideways. So then I end up with a 90-degree turn. So with the 90-degree turn in place, then I'll take a pin and put the pin in, and then work on the other side. So again, I'm going to, I can't do this backwards, so I'm going to pinch this. So I'll pinch it. That'll cause this to come down to the side, and then I tend to, where I've pinched the fabric at the top, I try and get it in line with the zipper teeth. So yeah, so that's doing it right there. If you can see that, I'll try and zoom in on it. So anyways, so yeah, I folded it back, pinched at the line, and then folded it so that pinched line matches up with the teeth. I'm going to pin it. I'm just going to turn around and top stitch it. So I'm going to start, I usually start at the bottom, hand crank it a couple up until I feel like I'm close enough to the top. Actually, I think I'm going to put it this way, pin this way. So I'm going to start at the bottom here and go up a bit, hand cranking it, and when I think I'm close to the end and I can just use the machine, I will start it up. I will use either a stiletto, or I have these, I have these bent nose tweezers. I use them to help push the coils from the zipper teeth under my machine, so I keep my fingers out of the way. So I'm going to turn around and do that, and then we'll move on to the next step. All right, so you can see I have it at a 90-degree turn. They're pretty even. I'm just going to grab my lighter and make sure that the threads are all melted and the edges of the zipper tape are all melted. All right, so I don't have my zipper slider on right yet. I like to work without it for as long as possible. And being that we can pretty much put this bag together and I can put it on at the end, I'll probably go ahead and do that. So now that we have this, we can set that aside for a few minutes. We're going to flip over to your recessed zipper pieces to the wrong side. I'm going to try and line them up. And we want to mark 1 inch in from either short edge. Actually, I'm just going to do the 2 exterior ones first. So I'm taking my 1 inch by 6 inch ruler and matching up the long edge, and then I'm just going to draw a line 1 inch in from the short edge, and I'm going to do that on both sides. And if one happens to be slight bit longer than the other, go from the shorter one. it's not going to matter a huge amount. So there's the exterior. I'm going to do the lining pieces. Alright, so we've got the 1 inch measured on either side. I don't know if you can see the line or not. Alright, before I go any further, I'm just going to put a little bit of double-sided tape at the ends of each of the short ends of each of these pieces. I'm not using my good scissors. So now we have tape on either end. We'll use that to help stick the fabric down on the ends after we've stitched it on. So I'm going to just take, do I have my, yep, I have my Choco pen. So I'm going to take my Choco pen, and on these really dark exterior pieces, I'm going to put a line on the outside too, so I can see where the 1 inch mark is from the outside, because I'm going to line my zipper up with that. So I have the 1 inch marks on the front and on the back side of my pieces. You can't see it on this, it's a little too dark, but they are there. And I put them on the front so that I can match up the zipper. So we've done the 90 degrees on the zipper, and I want to place, I'm going to just work with one for now. So I already split my zipper in half. So I want to place the 90 degree side and the 90 degree angle with the, just within about a 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch away from the 1 inch line that I've marked. I also want it my zipper to be face down and along the long side, match up with the long side of the zipper, recessed zipper panel. So yeah, I've got it about, about 1/8 of an inch, somewhere between 1/8 and 1/4. I'm going to clip this down. Clip it down, and I'm going to stitch it on, making sure that I start and stop at that. I'm going to baste it on first. Start and stop at that 1 inch line. So this side's not so important because it starts within it, but we want to make sure that we don't stitch over the 1 inch line on this side. I'm actually going to take my air erase pen and mark it on the zipper just so I can see it. So once I've basted that on, I'm going to grab one of these lining panels and line it up. Line up the short edges and the long edge top, and then I'm going to stitch it together. So I've got, what I have is the zipper right sides together with the exterior, and then I will put the lining right side on top of the zipper. So it'll be wrong side of the zipper to right side of the lining, but right side of the exterior with the right side of the lining. So I like basting on first. I find I get a nicer zipper that way. So I'm going to go ahead and do that for this one. I will add in my lining piece and stitch that on, and then I'll come back. All right, I decided I was going to move to the machine view so that I could give a little closer look as what I'm doing, because I think it might have been a little further away. So you can't, it's hard to see it because it's air erasing, but there is a 1 inch line there, 1 inch line there. I have taken my zipper apart. I have put it face down on the vinyl, and I have put it about 1/8 of an inch away from that line. I'm now going to baste it on. So I have a number 5 stitch length, and I'm just going to start basting from close to that 1 inch line, actually at the start of the zipper, but we don't want to go over the 1 inch line. So I'm going to start basting this in place. And now that we're getting close to the 1-inch mark, I also marked it on my zipper tape. So we're getting close to the 1-inch mark. I'm going to stitch up to it and then back stitch and stop right there. Now I want to take my lining piece and match it right sides together. And I'm going to use some clips this time, or use some clips again. And clip this on. I find my machine does a better job of stitching zippers with the right side down of the zipper. So I'm going to keep going. Usually I would put the thinner fabric on the bottom, but with zippers, I find it stitches better when I stitch them from the wrong side. So now I'm going to put my needle down on that 1-inch because I've matched up the ends, which should match up the 1-inch lines. I'm going to start there, go forward, back, not going over the line, and then actually start that again. So I want to stitch this on with a almost a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. My machine doesn't, like, this side of the foot's a little too thick to get that close. So I'm going to put my needle down on the 1-inch line as close as I can to being a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. And I'm going to go forward. And I forgot, that's why there are stitches already there, that I was stitching this on and not basting it on. So now I'm going to go and stitch all the way along. And being that my presser foot is pushing it a little, if you can see already, it's about a 1/4 of an inch off. I'm going to try and stop, grab my pen. I'm going to try and stop at the 1-inch mark based on what's at the zipper tape. So right now it's there. So we will still have it 1 inch, but we'll probably have more of the lining fabric than we will of the exterior when we folded it back, just because it stretched a bit when I was sewing it. That's fine, we just adjust where we stop. All right, so now I'm going to fold this away from the zipper back on itself. I'm going to clip the sides in a couple spots just to keep it lined up. And I'm going to move this a bit. I'm going to take the tape off of one side and I'm going to fold it back on itself. And the tape is there to hold it into place. So that is down about the 1-inch line. Now I'm going to do the same thing. Actually, I should just take the clips out. Going to do the same thing with the lining. I want to match up the top of the lining. So I want the folded edges, I want to match up, make sure they're even. So that looks pretty good to me. So I'm going to take the paper off the tape and fold this one down there. So now when we go to turn it this way to top stitch, those two are even. I'm going to put a clip in it so that it stays together. So we want it to be even on both sides. So I'm going to go ahead and do it for this. So yeah, I'm going to go ahead and do it for this side. And there we go. We've got both sides matched up. And I'm going to go and clip around this edge, the long edge. So now I'm going to baste. So I want to top stitch these 3 edges and then I'll baste this one. I'm going to start down here on the side because it's easier to hide the stitches when they're down there than if you started on this corner. So I'm going to 1/8 of an inch, number 5 stitch length, and I'm just going to baste or top stitch and then baste. And if you need help getting up over the humps, just use a hump jumper. and top stitch along this, pulling the zipper out as far as it'll come, but not stretching it. We don't want to stretch it, then it'll get really wavy. And there we go. One side of the recessed zipper panel is done. Now for the other side, so this is one way, we want this zipper to be going this way. So we need to we want them faced together. So this will have to be right side up when it's done. So I'm going to take it and I'm going to just lay it over this way. So if you flip it over to see the right sides, you can see that we've put the zipper is actually opposite to what we did on that. On this one, it was zipper over this way. This one, it's zipper to the right. Zipper to the left, zipper to the right. It needs to go opposite or you won't be able to do up your zippers. So I'm just going to do exactly as I did for the other one. Clip it in place. I'm going to baste it along this edge. Then I'm going to grab my lining piece. I'm going to stitch around, or stitch along at almost a 1/4 of an inch, starting and stopping at the 1 inch mark. Grab my pen. So mark the 1 inch mark here. So I'm going to start and stop, make sure that this one is about 1/8 of an inch. It's over a little bit far. So we really want the zipper 90 degrees to end up in the same spot. So shift this over a bit. So I will go baste it on. I will add the lining. I will stitch it at an almost a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. And then I will fold these back and make sure they're even on both sides. I will top stitch the ends, top stitch along there, and baste it. So basically what we did to this, I will be doing to this one. Now before I go to stitch this, I want to make sure that it looks like it's about the same length as the other panel, because I want things to line up. I want them to look right. So right now I'm just eyeballing it and they look pretty close. So I think I'm okay to go ahead and stitch. I was going to put the zipper slider in. That's another way you can tell. If you put your zipper slider on, do it right up to the top, see where everything lands. You can tell if you've got it close or not. But I think I'm going to just put that aside for now. We can check it after. But before getting these stitched down, if you want to give it a check over, you can adjust them then. Once you've stitched them down, that's where they're staying. Unless you want to rip out your stitches, but I don't. All right, both sides are done. Looks pretty good. So there's my recessed zipper panel all done. I'm going to probably remove this slider, but there we have it. That's what it's going to look like. Anyways, time to move on to the next step. All right, it's time to move on to the lining of the bag. So I'm moving on to the faux. This is the faux trim slip pocket. It's in the add-on pack 2, page 18. So we want to have, this will be my exterior, this will be the lining of it. So we want to match up the long edges and stitch them at 1/4 inch with the 1/4 inch seam allowance. And I'm going to change it to 3.5 because we want the more of the joining stitch as opposed to the decorative. So all the way across. Now we're going to match up the other edge. And this time I'm going to clip it because they're different widths. So this one will be flat where this will be rounded. That's the way it's meant to be. So I'm just going to clip it in place so it doesn't pull on me when I'm stitching it. And then stitch it with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. And now we want to pull this right side, turn this so that it's right sides out. So I've just reached in, grab one of the ends, and just pull it through. There we go. Now I'm going to line up one of the seams. This is my bottom, and I'm going to line them up, if you can see, evenly, front and back evenly, all the way along, and I'm going to clip it. All right, and smooth it out. We want to make sure that the seam allowance is going towards the top. It's a little trickier when the front is lighter than the back because it wants to go, the waterproof canvas is more stiff, so it wants to point this down, but we really want it pointed up because we want to catch it when we top stitch. So if you have all cotton, or even this like cotton with waterproof canvas, you can iron it, which I think I'm going to take it to the iron. I'm going to push the seam up towards the waterproof canvas. I'm going to iron it, and then I'll be back to top stitch. Okay, I've pressed my pocket, making sure that the seam allowance is pointing up to the faux trim area. Now I am going to stitch it at 1/8 inch across the top. Going to come down a couple stitches and then fix that, and then do 1/8 inch from this edge so that we have a nice double stitch on our pocket. And there we go. We have our faux trim slip pocket. And we can put this aside for now and move on to the next step. All right, so our next step actually still uses the slip pocket. We want to add the slip pocket to one of our lining pieces. So I went ahead, I snipped my centers on the piece. I've drawn a line up as per the instructions on page 19 of the add-on pack 2. And I've placed I marked centers on my pocket, and I've placed my pocket, the bottom edge along that marked line, in line with the center snips. So now I'm going to baste it on the sides and top stitch across the bottom to add the pocket onto the lining piece. So I'm going to do 1/8 inch seam allowance on a number 5 top, stitch length. And then top stitch along the bottom. And then baste up the other side. So in the pattern, it has 2 side pockets and then 2 pen pockets, one on either side of the center. And they've got about 1.5 inches on either side of the center. I want to use my center for my cell phone. So I have found that if I do 2 inches on either side of the center, so I'm just going to mark the bottom and the top. This is air erasing pen, so it should be fine. And 2 inches the other side of the center. Where's my, yep. That this center pocket then is large enough for me to just slip my cell phone in there. Or you could slip pens or whatever. Just, this is the way this bag is for me this time, and I would like to be able to slip my cell phone in. So I'm going to start with the top stitch length of 5, come up from the bottom, back stitch a couple times, turn around and go all the way back down, back stitching a couple times. I'll do that on both sides to separate the pockets. Alright, there we have the 3 pockets now. Had I gone up and I stopped right before the faux trim and did that back stitch and then all the way back down, I could have put some nice rivets in either side. But since I've already stitched all the way up, I don't really need the rivets, but if I were to punch the rivets, I would end up cutting my threads, which isn't good. So if you want to have a rivet on either side, only go up to the base of the trim, make sure you backstitch, and then I would come all the way back down again on both sides. Then you have the space to cut the hole and put a rivet in. All right, for this next section, so we're completely done with the other slip pocket. I want to add a zipper pocket to this bag. Partially because I like zippered pockets, but also because I like to be able to close up the lining of my bag. So we'll turn the bag through the lining and then I close it up through the zippered pocket. So I have decided I'm adding one, and I'm using the overlay from the driftwood handbag pattern by Carissa at Needle and Anchor Patterns. I will link it in the description below, and I will also try and put a card in right now so that you can just click on the card and it will take you to that tutorial. Just cleaning up some edges. So as I said, I cut this out using the pattern piece from the driftwood handbag. I've figured out how far down I want, and I can give you this because this is not in the pattern. There's no zipper pocket in the pattern. This is all stuff I've come up with. So I've measured down about 1.5 inches down, snipped my centers. I've marked the center of this zipper overlay, and I've also put wash away wonder tape on the back. I like wash away wonder tape for this because it's easier to remove than the leather tape. And once we have this on and stitched around the outside, we're going to be cutting the waterproof canvas away, so we want to be able to pull it up from this. So anyways, I'm going to remove the paper backing from the wonder tape all the way around the overlay. And I'm going to put that center mark on the overlay, match it with the center mark of the lining piece, and also match the edge of the overlay with that line that I've drawn. Try and get it to lie all nice and flat. And it should look something like that if you decide to put on the overlay. If you're not doing the zipper pocket, feel free to use the links provided in the description and jump to the next section if that's what you like. Otherwise, go ahead and enjoy this. So I'm going to stitch around the outside of the zipper lay with a top stitch length 5, and yep, so I'm going to just pick a spot probably on the bottom. I'm going to start somewhere in here, and then I'm going to finish here, just going around, top stitch 1/8 of an inch around the outside of this. And I'm going to take my time and go slow so that I have nice corners. Now I decided that I was going to back stitch. It's not huge. You can see where I did. The other way you could do it is leave the tails long, pull it through and tie it off, but I thought this was fine. So now I'm going to flip it out, well, cut center. Where'd my scissors go? So I'm going to start cutting in the center. And now I'm going to flip it right over, and I'm going to, this is where we need to pull the overlay away from the back lining piece, and I'm going to snip up about 1/8 of an inch away from the stitch line and cut away all of this center. So if we had used the leather tape on this, it wouldn't come away as easily. So that's why I use the wash away wonder tape, because it does come away pretty easy. Still sticky, but we want to make sure that we're not cutting the overlay itself, just the backing, the fabric from the lining. And there we go. We can toss that piece out. So now we want to move on to creating the zipper pocket itself. So there's a couple of different ways of doing it. I'm just going to do it the easy way. So I'm going to take one of my pieces, put my zipper tape down. So I've got my lining piece face up, my zipper tape face up on it. I'm going to base stitch at an eighth of an inch along the edge, all the way across. And I came close to going off the edge there, but I should be okay. I want to keep the zipper flat. So I'm going to fold this over. So I want the seam allowance going towards the pocket piece. I'm going to flip it over, and I'm going to top stitch 1/8 of an inch away from the edge, trying to catch that zipper tape so it will hold it flat. I need to make sure that everything's going the right way. Use my fingers to push it and hold it down, and top stitch all the way along. All right, so for this pocket, I'm just going to quickly measure. I have cut the pocket pieces to, I think it was 7.5 by 10, 7.5 by 10, and I went a little over on my zip length. So I'm just winging it. So if you have a pattern that you like to use, a different pocket pattern, go ahead and use that. This is just what I'm doing. So now I'm going to take this piece that I've got with things lying flat, and I'm going to put it matching up the sides of the lining pieces. I'm actually going to clip it this time. And all the way across. Try and match up both sides if you can. Clip it all the way across. I'm going to stitch this one on again at 1/8 of an inch, but I am not going to top stitch it. So the reason I'm not top stitching it is so that it will lie flat like this in the pocket. So if I top stitch this one up, we're going to lose some of the pocket, bringing it back down. So if I just leave it like this, it'll sit better in the pocket. Now I want to go and add my zipper slider on at this point. So again, breaking the zipper apart, slipping it on one side, then the other, trying to keep them pretty much even. And then pulling it across. There we go. And it looks pretty good. Neither side is larger, or there's no bubble on one side versus the other. It's pretty much centered. So I'm going to quickly add some, you still see that if I put it there? I'm going to add some double-sided tape. to the bottom and the top edge of the zipper pocket. And I try and keep it right along the bottom and top edge because I really don't want this in my seam getting caught in my seam, because my machine really doesn't like it very much. Let's put this on both sides. Okay, now I'm going to take the tape off at the bottom. Make it stick first. There we go. Take the tape off the bottom. And I'm going to try and line up the pocket underneath here as even as I can. It's like centered as much as I can. So put this down. I can, with the tape, I can reposition it. So I can adjust it a little bit here. All right, that looks pretty good. Now I'm going to take the tape off the top. And again, evenly, be as even as I can, putting the overlay down. Now we want to stitch around the zipper. So I'm going to pull that out of the way. It's not going to lie very nice, but it's fine for now. So I'm going to stitch around the center part of the overlay around the zip. Now I'm going to start down. So the zipper closes this way. I'm going to start just down from the zip. I'm doing a top stitch of 5, and I'm going to go this way all the way around and meet it back up here. And now that I'm getting close to the zipper, I'm going to move it to the other side. And then come back across the top. Going to go clip my stitch or snip my stitches or my threads. I'm going to go over this a few stitches. And then hopefully that'll lock it in. I'm going to trim it right down at the fabric. Pull a little bit on this. Now I'm just going to melt these ends a bit just to keep them from fraying. And there we go. We have the zipper overlay added. Now I probably should have done an edge coat or something, because this vinyl looks like it wants to fray a bit. Hopefully if I get these threads off, it will stop. But anyways, there we go. We've added that pocket. Now we want to make sure we leave it open. I need to stitch up the sides, but I'm going to leave the bottom open. The bottom, because I just measured them exactly the same length when I cut them out, one of them is going to be shorter than the other. We're just going to cut off the excess. It doesn't have to be neat and tidy right here, because we're going to end up folding it up and turning it under anyways. So I'm going to pull the lining away from the pocket, and I'm going to start stitching down approximately 3/8 of an inch. I'm actually going to change it to a 3.5, so more of a joining type stitch. Go down. And now I'm getting closer to the bottom, so I'm going to fold this up. This just makes it easier to turn out later, or to stitch up later. So then I'll flip it to the other side. Oh, we want to make sure our zipper pocket's open, because we're going to need that later. So I'm going to turn up the end, just like we did on the other side. Turn it up, and then I'm going to stitch over it and stitch up the side at 3/8 of an inch. Now, if you have a lot of extra zipper tape on the side, you can trim it. It doesn't really matter in this, so I'm just going to leave it. But what we want to do is pull on the sides and flip it. This creates basically like a crease. We want to crease the bottom, so it makes it easier to stitch up the bottom. A clean bottom at the end. All right, and there we go. There's the zipper pocket added. Again, this isn't part of the pattern, but I thought I would include it anyways, just in case you want to add one. All right, so I completely missed one of the first couple of steps on page 5 of the original pattern. It was sewing the exterior panels together. I kind of wondered where it was, but I jumped right over that. So it's after you do the bag base. In the pattern, it's sewing the exterior panels. So it's kind of showing that patterns are a guideline, because as long as the right pieces get put together, the order in which you do it isn't as big of a deal. I mean, you have to put them, like if I tried to put the exterior gusset on this now, it wouldn't work. So these have to be put together before you actually go and put the bag together. So as long as all of the components of the bag are done, then you can put it together. So I'm going to go ahead now. I'm going to line my panel pieces. I want contrast. So I'm going to line my panel pieces up, starting at, I'm actually going to start at the top, because if the bottom's off a little bit, then we can trim it up, but we don't really want the top being off. So line it up at the top. So my panel, I have interfaced this this faux leather. It's a mauve gray faux leather from Bodio. It's very stretchy. I've tried to adhere some woven interfacing onto it, but it didn't want to fuse very well. So hopefully it doesn't give me issues and it doesn't give me too many puckers later. So anyways, I'm going to line these up, actually flip them around the other way. And then I'm going to stitch at a 3/8 inch seam with a 3/8 inch seam allowance from the top to the bottom. I'm going to do that on both pieces. And then I'm going to butterfly the seams and top stitch, but I'll go over that when I get there. So right now, just joining the 2 exterior pieces. All right, so now I'm going to take my pieces, open them up. I'm going to butterfly the seams, which means splitting them and tucking one side of the seam allowance one way and the other way. So split, yeah, separating the seams. And then I'm going to top stitch along both sides, 1/8 of an inch seam allowance with a number 5 stitch length. And I'm going to do this for both pieces, both sides of the seam. So underneath, I just stick my hand, I don't know if you can see this, I stick my hand underneath with my fingers and go along the seams, trying to make sure it's split out, and then the other hand on top holds it down. So I've separated the seam on this side with this hand, and now I'm going to hold it down with the other one. So all right, so I have both panels done. I'm quickly going to add my, I have cork labels. I'm going to add it to the back of this bag. I don't want anything to interfere with my nice embroidered design. So I'm going to do that off camera, and then we'll be back to do the next part. All right, we have our main panels all done, and I have my name tag stitched on. So now it's time to move on to sewing the gussets to the panels. All right, now it's time to add the exterior gusset to the exterior gusset panels. I've already added my name tag, so if you want to add a bag label or something, that would be the time. So I'm going to take, I've already notched, put notches in the center of my base. I'm going to take one of my panels, I'm going to put it upside down in front of me, take my exterior gusset, matching up the center snip with that center seam, and I am going to clip all the way around. So put a couple clips in. Really good. Come up to the top, matching up the top sections. And I'm going to stitch with my gusset piece up. So I'm pointing my clips towards the gusset piece. I'm going to move to the other side and pin the top again, the gusset piece to the exterior. Again, clips right side up. And working my way around. Using as many clips as I need to make it even. Okay, so I've gone ahead and finished clipping this. I don't know if you can see it at the top, there's about 1/4 of an inch where my side gusset pieces are taller than my front pieces. I must have done something in my cutting or sewing seam allowance off, or I cut something slightly wrong, because these should match. I'm not too worried about it right now. I will figure it out when I go to stitch the inside and the outside together. For now, I'm just going to keep them even, keep everything centered, and I'm going to stitch around this. I'm going to probably do 2. I'm going to baste around it, probably 1/8 of an inch seam allowance, and then I'm going to come back and do a second one at 3/8. Or maybe I'll do 1/4. Yeah, the first time I'll do it at 1/4, and then the second time I'll do it at 3/8. That way, then I'll reinforce my seams, my stitches won't show as much, and it's easier to do like a 1/4 inch seam allowance, taking off all the clips, and then go back over it after. So I'm going to do that to both the front and the back. Well, I'll come back and do the back. So I'll do that to the front, and then I'll come back and do the back. I'm going to move you over to the machine now so you can watch me stitch it. All right, so now I'm going to stitch it. As I mentioned, I'm going to do 1/4 of an inch first, and then I'm go back and do the 3/8. Make sure that any hardware you have is out of the way. And for those of you who've asked if I like my Texo, I love the way it stitches. I find this table kind of gets in the way, and this is one of the spots it gets in the way. Things get caught on it, and then it doesn't come right up to meet the center bar. I mean, it's a cylinder arm, so it's not actually meant for this. This is just a nice to have addition. It allows you to do some flatbed things, but it does get caught. So it's not perfect, but it's the best machine I have. So anyways, I'm going to go around 1/4 of an inch, then 3/8. All right, I've stitched around it at both 1/4 of an inch and then 3/8 of an inch all the way around the bag. I'm checking my seams. Looks pretty good. It's easy on this way to check them. So yep, looks pretty good. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to trim my seam allowances because I want to trim them back a bit. And then I'm going to go ahead and pin the back part on exactly the same way and stitch around it exactly the same way, and then we'll be back. So I've gone ahead and I've clipped my back panel on. I've tried to make sure I left approximately the same space at the top to keep these as even as possible. Now I'm going to stitch around again at about 1/4 of an inch and then in 3/8 of an inch all the way around. Okay, so I've stitched both sides all together and I've trimmed up my seam allowance. Now I just want to have a quick look and see what it looks like from the outside. Oops, sorry. Alright, that looks pretty good. Okay. There we go. Time to move on to the lining. Okay, before we start sewing the gusset onto the lining panels, we need to add our recessed zipper. So right now it's looking good. This is I want it to close to the left. So this is the way I'm going to want it to put it down on my panel. So this is the back of my bag. I like the zipper pocket at the back. So I'm going to lie it down this way, matching up the center snips, grabbing some clips and clipping this into place. It doesn't go across the whole width because we don't want it all the way across. We just want it, make sure you've got it centered because it doesn't go all the way across. So clip this into place. I'm actually going to unzip this, take this part off for now. That will go on that one. And now I'm going to baste it at 1/8 of an inch, baste it in place here. Actually, I've got it backwards. So we want the other one on this So we want the zipper panel face up. So I want it to close to the right. I need lining to lining, and I want the vinyl part up. So I'm going to match up the snips, clip it over both ways, both directions. And now I'm going to baste this on top of the panel. All right, do the same thing for the other piece. So the other piece, we want, again, lining side up, face up, and recessed panel face up. Now we want to clip it across, starting from the center, clip out. And we'll baste it like we did the other panel. Right. Now we want to take one of our exterior top pieces, take one of them at a time, and I want to do this. I'm going to center snip. Actually, I'm going to snip both sides, both centers, top and bottom, because we're going to need this later. And I'm going to put it face down, matching the long edges. And I'll clip this. Now I'm going to sew it on with a 3/8 inch seam allowance across the long edge. And then I will do exactly the same for the other panel. All right, so it looks like my navy faux leather is a little bit stretchy. As you can see, it's bigger, it's stretched enough so that it's got a 1/4 inch on the one side. I'm just gonna keep going with it, and hopefully it doesn't matter too much. So now I'm going to, so I've got it like this, I'm going to fold up the vinyl away from the main panel, and then I'm going to top stitch along this panel. Nope, looks like I had it the wrong way. So I want to flip all of it up. So I want the seam allowance going this way. I want to flip it all up, and I'm going to stitch along, top stitch along this panel. So 1/8 inch away from the edge, size 5 stitch length. Making sure the seam allowance is going down towards the bottom of the bag. And again, we want, so we've got it like this. We want the seam allowance to go to the side we're top stitching on. So I'm going to top stitch on the lining piece. I want it facing the direction the lining piece is going. So like that for this one. And there we have our lining panels. All right, so when I went to add the gusset piece, the lining gusset piece to the lining pieces, I figured out that my lining pieces are significantly different lengths. So matching up at the top here, you can see that it's almost 1/2 inch, if not more. Yeah, it's almost 5/8 of an inch shorter. So I'm not sure if I've cut something wrong, stitched the seam used the wrong stitch, wrong seam allowance for the seam, or what, but I'm not going to go recut it, and I'm just not going to go redo it. I'm going to try and work with it the way it is. So what I did is I took the lining panel for the bag that just has a snap closure usually, and it should be the correct size, and then I measured it against my piece and found that it was significantly longer. So putting that aside, grabbing the other piece, you can see that there is a gap here. It doesn't lie flat, and so you can't pin it or clip it properly, so it needs to be adjusted. So what I'm going to do, what I've gone and done on this one side, and it fits pretty well, is I've gone and undone the seam, moved it down about 3/8 of an inch, and stitched it across again at 3/8 inch seam allowance. I'm going to trim off this excess. I just left it there for showing you guys. So I'm going to trim it off, and I'll fold it back up and top stitch my seam. But in doing this, it actually, the way I had it clipped, it lined up very well. So I'm going to do that to the other side. I'm going to go and do that to the other side, and then I'll continue on with the I'll continue on clipping, and we'll go ahead and stitch it up. But I'm going to fix this up off camera, but I just wanted to say what I was going to do, because I do have different lengths. Doesn't mean you have to scrap everything you're doing, just find a different way of adjusting it. So I kept the base the same, I've adjusted it off the sides, but I don't want to take it off the top, because these are special rounded and graded downwards. Like it's smaller at the top than it is at the bottom. It's easier to take it off the bottom than off the top. So I'm going to go ahead and do this, and we'll come back and stitch it on, and then go ahead and add the other piece. All right, so I realized after I took out this side seam, I didn't explain how I went about figuring out how much to cut off. I didn't do any fancy math or anything. I simply took the seam apart. Hopefully you can see this. I took the seam apart. I decided that the base is fine. I'm going to leave that as is. So I decided to fold that one over and then cut this one to match up. So cut the other one to match up. This had an extra 3/8 on it. I've already cut it off. And then I realized I probably should have explained it. I didn't do any fancy math. All I did was start pinning where it's supposed to go, or clipping where it's supposed to go. Start clipping. So I clipped it at the top, and I clipped the base in the center, and then worked my way towards each other. So in the previous clip, I had that, you could see the extra fabric. So I basically moved that extra to the seam, and then matched up where the base meets the gusset side, and decided that that amount down is what I needed to cut off to make it fit. So yeah, I didn't do any fancy math for this. It was just putting the ends where they're supposed to go, and then taking out the excess from the corner. So, all right, so I have it all clipped up now, matching the top, and I've matched the center, and I've matched the other side. Since the lining is quite a bit smaller than the exterior, I'm only going to use a 1/4 inch seam allowance instead of 3/8. So that should give us it'll be nice and snug in there, but it shouldn't be too small. Hopefully, fingers crossed. I'm guessing at that. Normally we make a larger seam allowance in the lining so that it'll fit nice inside the bag. But since we're already smaller, I'm hoping that this won't make it too small. But if I give it a little, like an 1/8 of an inch on either side, I'm just hoping it'll fit. So anyways, I'm going to do it at a 1/4 of an inch, starting at the top. I have a little mark in here. I see the silver mark. I'm going to stop there and backstitch, move over, stop here. I guess I can take out the extra in between. So I'll stop and backstitch there, move over here, start with backstitch, and go all the way around to the top. And again, I'm just going to use a 1/4 of an inch, hoping that helps the lining fit properly. So. right, so we've left a hole in this side for turning. Now we're going to go ahead and clip on the other side and repeat the same, sewing at a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. And then we'll be back to work on the next side. All right, so I figured out when I went to stitch up the second side that my lining pieces are shorter but not narrower than the actual pattern piece. So while it was fine to do 1/4 of an inch most of the way around, at the top I needed to keep the 3/8 of an inch so that it will hopefully fit properly inside the exterior. And we want to make sure that everything lines up when we're stitching around. When we're combining this to the adding this to the exterior and stitching it around, we want these to be matching up. So I have 3/8 of an inch down to about here, and then I go to 1/4 of an inch. I'm going to go back to the other side now that I figured that out, and for the first bit of vinyl I'm going to come in to 3/8 of an inch and then work my way out. So by here I'm back to 1/4 of an inch, and I'm going to fix that on both sides of the top part, so at least the top parts line up. So I'll do that and then come back and we'll move on to the next part. All right, so I have the interior lining all stitched up. I've turned it right side out because I want to put it right sides together with the bag. I also want my zipper pocket to be at the back. Since my embroidery design is the front, I need to flip it over, and I will put it inside. I like putting my lining inside my exterior, especially when the lining is a little smaller than the exterior. So now I'm going to push it down as far as I can go in there. Make sure that my zipper panel is turned down, pointing down into the bag. I'm going to match up the centers, and I'm going to pin towards the towards the lining because I'll stitch it from the inside. Then I'm going to come to the sides and match up the side pieces. A couple more in here. See if we can see it on my lap. So it's easier to pin on my lap. So there, I put a couple clips in on either side of the center. Make sure, come to the other side, make sure the lining panel is pointing down. Match up the center marks and clip. And I'm going to take a look at the ends. Make sure that your D-ring or O-ring or whatever you have is pointing down, and then match up the seams on either side and clip. It's a little bit there. So I'm going to actually nest the seams. So I'm going to make the lining ones go in because it's easier than making the exterior ones go in. So I want to nest the seams so I reduce the amount of bulk. So I'm going to pin them this way. Yeah. Now I'm going to flip to the other side and do the same thing. So these ones, it's harder to get those going than it is, there's less in the side seams. So I'm going to have the side seams again going towards the center, and these ones can stay out. I'm nesting these seams together. I'll clip it so that the tops are even. Push the lining down if I have to, and then clip it so that the lining is pointing in. I'll do the same on this side. So nesting those seams. And then another clip here. And make sure everything looks good. Looks good. All right. Now I'm going to start on the back. I'm probably going to start midway through the back. 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. I'm going to go around the whole bag on the, stitching it from the lining side. Yeah, so I'm going to stitch it from the lining side, going all the way around 3/8 of an inch seam allowance with a 3.5 stitch length. So I want to join the exterior and interior together. And I will use my stiletto as I need to. Put my stitch ripper away. Hopefully I don't need it anymore. All right. And I'm going to take it as slow as I need to make sure that I get a nice seam. Alright, so now we've stitched it all the way around. I'm going to trim some of these down, especially on these corners, because that's just way too much to have in there. So I'm going to trim it down to about 1/8 of an inch. There's a little too much bulk, or I would have used my, I don't think I can use these pinking shears. Use my pinking shears to go around these curves. Oh, okay. There we go. All right. Now I'm going to reach in the lining and pull it out. And I'm going to actually turn around to the table view so I have a little more space to show you turning the bag. All right, we're at the table view. I've got the bag here all stitched up. I've pulled the lining out of the inside of the bag. Now I am going to reach my hand in the hole, bottom hole, push in from the bottom and grab it with my other hand and try and pull the bag into the lining and then all the way through to the other side. Pull the lining out further and fix the corners. Now I'm going to tuck it all in the bag, the lining all back into the bag. And I need to poke out these side gusset pieces there. Poke it up a bit so they're not stuck in on this side. Right, now I want to go along the outside and try and get a really nice edge. So I'm going to push the recess zipper and this top panel in, and this curved edge, make it all nice and flat. So I'm going to start clipping around as I go. There we go. The sides are a little thick. These sides here are a little thick, so I'm going to grab my, I have some pliers that are flat. They actually have a protective rubber coating end cap on it. They're flat. So I'm going to take these and I'm going to actually remove my clips. This seam right here is really thick, so I'm going to take them and I'm just going to squeeze it as hard as I can. Might have to rearrange. And then I'm going to go along and basically crimp the rest of this seam so that I can get it in under my needle. All right, now I need to go and top stitch this. I'm going to turn the bag inside out so that I can top stitch with this. I want to top stitch on the outside, not from the inside, because I like my top thread, the look of my top thread more than my bottom thread. So I'm going to turn this inside out, going to top stitch it, and I'm going to do it at 1/4 of an inch. No, I'm actually going to do 1/8 of an inch all the way around. So I'll be moving you back over to the machine and I'll top stitch this. All right, bag is turned right side out or inside out. I'm just adjusting my clips. I want the seam to be as close to the edge as possible. I want a really nice seam on it. I'm going to top stitch starting in the center, go all the way around, center of the back actually, go all the way around. I'm going to do it at 1/8 of an inch with number 5, so top stitching. So hopefully I can get this out of the way so you guys can see. Starting in the center, needle down, make sure it's 1/8 of an inch. So needle down, and I'm not going to back stitch on this one. I'm just going to keep going around, and I will meet back in the center and going over the stitches once or twice and back. Sorry about that, my battery was getting low on my phone, so I had to plug it in. So again, I'm going to top stitch 1/8 of an inch, size 5 stitch length all the way around, and come back here. I'll go over the stitches a couple and back, and that should lock it in. I'm going to try and keep everything out of the way, including the recessed zipper. I've got most of it clipped down either into this pocket or the zipper pocket. Hopefully it stays out of my way and I don't catch it in my top stitching. So here we go. All right, so there we go. Gonna go turn the bag right side out and work on the handle. All right, so I just realized I completely forgot the closure tab that goes on the outside with the ring, the O-ring. So obviously I'm gonna leave it off because I'm not pulling the stitches out now. Unfortunately, I forgot. I was kind of looking forward to that being part of the bag. Anyways, so yeah, I'm not exactly sure where it's added. Oh, it's added after in the main pattern, so the original pattern, after you sew the lining together, yeah, the lining gusset to the lining pieces, then you do your closure tab. You stitch up your closure tab and then add it to the exterior at that point. All right, before moving on to the handle, I am going to finish up the lining of the bag. I've turned it right side out. So now I need to go into the bag, pull out my zipper pocket, reach in and grab the lining. I want to pull the lining, all of it, through the zipper pocket. And I want to match up the centers, and I'm going to clip. All right, I'm going to continue with the, at this point I have a 1/4 inch seam allowance because the inside was the lining was a little too short. So I'm going to continue with my 1/4 inch seam allowance. I'm going to start back at this seam and go all the way to the other seam to close it up. And with a 1/4 inch seam allowance, I don't really need to trim it down. So I'm just going to pull it back and pull it back in and shove it back in the bag. There we go. And now I'm going to take my zipper pocket. I'm going to pull it straight so that the end seams are even. I'm going to grab some clips. You can do this without clips if you want. I just find when the bag is this heavy, it wants to pull off the side of my table, so it's better if I clip it. And that'll keep these seams lined up, or edges lined up. All right. So stick it under, and with an 1/8 inch seam allowance, I'm going to close up the pocket. Now I'm going to tuck the pocket back in. Right, it's in. The lining is in, and I'm going to close the pocket now. There we go. I can probably add my zipper slider. I'll do that when I move over to this side, to the table, so that we can create the hand strap. All right, since I've already described how to put a zipper slider on, I've gone ahead and done the zipper panel, recessed zipper panel. So now I need to move on to the handle. So when I looked at the instructions, it looks like the instructions are written for when you want the handle in here, not for when they're into the, like with the hidden connector. It's more for the connector coming out of the top than here, because you're supposed to have this attached to the handle. Since mine's already attached to the bag, it would be probably too difficult for me to maneuver it under to get nice stitching with it already attached. So I've decided that I'm going to use some swivel clasps, and I'm still going to use the 2 O-rings. And then I can just clip it on, and if I decide I want to unclip it and put a crossbody strap on, that works too. So anyways, I'm going to go ahead, I have gone ahead, and I've marked a line down the center, and I put some sticky tape down. The next step I need to do is, so these shorter ones are the sides and the longer ones the center top. So I'm going to put my 2 O-rings on. It doesn't really matter right now which direction they're facing. O-rings don't have much of a direction, but anyways. So, and then I'm going to bring the 2 short ends together, move those around, 2 short ends together, and I'm going to stitch across, swell through the raw edges with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So I'm going to just stitch across this 1/4 inch seam allowance and 3.5 stitch length. It's easier to clip it. Go ahead and clip it. Now I'm going to open up, or actually I'm going to trim off a little bit of these seams, so I don't want the extra bulk when I go to fold these over. So now I'm going to fold it out like this, butterfly the center seam, grab some double-sided tape, and use the double-sided tape to stick this down. Because I also want to, so remove the paper backing, if it will come off, there we go. And then I want to fold these edges into the center. Make sure it's nice and even all the way across, and do both sides. And if you need to, add some clips. I'm going to slowly take off the tape from the sides, reposition this long edge so that it meets up with the line that I've drawn down the center, and go all the way around, moving the tape and pushing down the long edge. All right, we want to flip it right side out. I'm going to move the seam to one of the sides with the O-ring on it. There we go, and I'm going to clip it in place. And that's going to be the back of this part. So then I'm going to clip the other side. I didn't put it in the center of this piece because I don't, when this is on my shoulder, I really don't want a seam, because this is kind of bulky. I don't want it on my shoulder. So I'm going to get as close as I can to, actually I move this around just a little bit because I don't want to be sewing over that. All right, there we go. So now I'm going to try and get as close as I can to the O-ring on both sides. Keep this flat together. You can put a piece of double-sided tape in the center if it just helps you keep it a little more even, the sides. I'm going to try to do it without, and hopefully it works. So I'm going to start on the side with the O-ring, one side where the join is. And I am going to use my top stitch of a 5, and I'm going to try, as I mentioned, to get as close to the O-ring as I can. I'm going to start in the middle of the handle, because I find if I try and start on a side, it wants to shift things and it doesn't like to climb the hill a bit. So I'm going to go ahead and then back a couple and then forward again. And then turn. I may need, let's see how this goes. Oh, it's not too bad. Sometimes I need protection from on the hardware from my foot, but I don't have the grip on the foot. It's all flat under there, so it doesn't tend to rip as much. It just gets caught. So I'm going around at 1/8 of an inch all the way around. And again, as close as I can to the O-ring on this side. That's probably good. And then I'm going to come across and then down the other side. Alright, so there's one. I'm going to do double stitching because I did double stitching on the connectors. So I'm just going to run another, where am I going to do it? I'm going to run it about 1/8 of an inch away from the current seam that's there, just on the inside. So again, I'm going to start around the center. All right, there's the top part of the handle. Now I'm going to be turning I want to make sure that the joins are in. They may twist while after it's made, but that's just twist them back. So the next part I'm going to do are the short sides. So I'm going to put, again, these in one on one end with a swivel clasp. Let me see. So this is the outside. Okay, so hopefully I get this right. So putting those on like that. Again, I'm going to stitch across the short end with 1/4 inch seam allowance. 3.5 stitch length. So in this part, I'm trying to match up the join on this side. It needs to be in the join on this side. So this is the front part. You don't see the join. So I want to hide it on this part as well on the back. All right, grabbing the bag, I'm just going to clip the handle onto either side. And there we go. The Goddess of the Sea handbag is pretty much done. I just need to add a zipper end to it. But otherwise, I might actually add some rivets to the handles just to dress it up a bit. But I haven't decided yet. So anyways, there we go. Goddess of the Sea, all done.